Test, test, test.
1, 2, 3.
Cool.
So it's Hamish and Elena for the loop back. Dano is in absentia.
Where's that?
Tauranga.
What does it mean to have a human in the loop?
Human in the loop.
Human in the loop.
What in the world is a human in the loop?
Being a human in the loop.
AI in the loop. Humans in charge.
Welcome to Human in the Loop. Last week we had Melissa Chan-Green from School Shorts on with us, and so let's go into a couple of the references and crazy facts.
Yes.
What is the purpose of educating a child? I asked ChatGPT to give it to me in one paragraph. It says the purpose of educating a child is to develop intellectual capacity, critical thinking, and natural curiosity while building essential foundations in literacy, numeracy, and communication that will serve them throughout life. It goes on to talk about education, social and emotional growth. Ultimately, is a dual purpose of helping a child reach their full potential as an individual whilst preparing them to contribute positively to their community, which I actually think is, in a roundabout way, exactly where we got to.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not even sure that there is a single purpose, right? It's kind of like art or other activities where the outcome and the purpose can be different for the different people involved in the same activity. Right, like the benefit to a child or the outcome for a child can be different to the reason that whoever has organized that education is performing the education. Like in public education, the question is not just why would you educate a child, but why would the government use taxpayer funding to pay for the expenses of educating that child? In private schooling, why would the parent, there's everybody goes into it with a different purpose. I think it's difficult to have a single, why as a parent do you send your kids to school to get them educated? That's not going to be the same reason as why the government is paying for that school.
Yeah, completely agree. And I mean, if you were homeschooling or if you lived on a farm and you were farm schooling, I think the schooling and education system as we know it is a formal structure around a type of growth that has to happen in life. I mean, then you start to go into what is the purpose of life?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of living?
Oh, and again, I think you'll definitely have to look this one up for the loop, back. I vaguely remember a study where they increased the population density of communities of rats. Because rats, when you give them enough space and food, they're actually really nice, right? Like the males have a habit of sort of scenting everywhere, but otherwise, they like people, they're curious, but as you increase the density, they get meaner and meaner. And once you reach like this critical density of population, you basically make them all crazy. They attack each other and you get all sorts of mental health issues and like cannibalism. But we do that to ourselves. Right. So a lot of education, part of it is like, how do you, and not necessarily formal education even, but like the sort of training we give our children, just in the day-to-day, learning from your parents and from example is how do you exist in highly populous societies? Right? Because you can't just get annoyed that someone insulted you and then swing your axe and have a bit of a fight. We would, that would not have a populous city last very long if we were still responding with violence to, insults.
The London AI First School. I thought that was really interesting. So I wanted to look up just a little bit more about it. It's called the David Game College, a private school in central London, which is the UK's first teacherless AI classroom. And it started in September 2024, so it's a relatively new initiative. It takes 20 GCSE students to be taught core curriculum almost entirely by artificial intelligence platforms and virtual reality headset. So that sets some parameters for the age and stage that they're at, which makes sense. It's a massive tuition fee, so it's obviously not a wide rollout. I mean, we like to keep talking about how democratized education is going to become with AI, but to your point last week, platforms are expensive, the gear is expensive, Wi-Fi is not widely available across the types of communities that are already at a digital deficit. And then I asked how this experiment was tracking and what's the most recent update on the school, because it's been going for, I suppose, over half a year now. It says that whilst initial reports mentioned there were 20 students, more recent updates suggest the current pilot only has about 7 students. They have learning coaches who are qualified teachers and mentors to guide them in using their AI systems and monitoring their behaviour. Again, showing that you can't just leave a kid alone with an AI system and expect that their education is going to be taken care of.
In the same way that you can't leave a kid in front of YouTube and assume their education's going to be taken care of.
100%. Have you come across or read about a recent, like within the last 2 weeks, MIT study about how people's brains are atrophying the more that they use large language models to do their work? I'll read you the highlights and then pop the link in the show notes and on our Instagram, because it's pretty interesting. MIT have completed a new study. Publications are starting to pick this up, but this is a research paper out of MIT's Media Lab called, and it was published on June the 10th, 2025, Your Brain on ChatGPT, the accumulation of cognitive debt when using an AI assistant for essay writing. So the abstract goes on to say that they were trying to study the neural and behavioural consequences of using LLMs to assist with essay writing and tasks. The too long don't read is, yeah, you're getting dumber.
Me specifically. I mean, that's a pretty huge inductive leap. We've surveyed these 20 American students and we've decided Hamish Friedlander is getting dumber.
Maybe not you specifically, because you read Hacker News. This study
there's quite a lot of it's a nerd forum. There's quite a lot of
this study of 54 subjects, so still, a relative sample size, but, of varying ages, like 18 to 40, divided into 3 groups and asked them to write SAT essays using ChatGPT, Google search engine, or nothing at all, respectively. And an EEG, you know what an EEG is?
You mean the electroencephalogram?
Is that what it means? Gosh, you asked that. So that thing, recorded
brain meter.
Recorded the writer's brain activity across 32 regions in the 3 different groups, and did find that people using ChatGPT had the lowest brain engagement and consistently underperformed at neural, linguistic, and behavioural levels. Over the course of months, the ChatGPT users got significantly lazier with each subsequent essay, often resorting to simply cutting and pasting by the end of the study. So it validates what we know to be true, and what I, as a copywriter, have started to notice in my own practice is that I have to force myself to keep going back to writing with my brain, because, you start to almost wallpaper turn it off, like finding your way somewhere in a car and going, oh, how did I get here?
If that was the exact example
Really?
I was thinking of, where you're like, just I really hope I paid attention in those traffic lights that I don't remember driving through.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
But I suppose that's the nature of our human brains. We are designed for energy efficiency. So as soon as your brain realizes you've offloaded a task, it's like, cool, I'm going to put that onto the automation plate. And now I'm going to carry on with a more important task right now. The problem is we're often not doing a more important task. We're distracting ourselves.
Well, it's also interesting how quickly you can dismiss that risk, right? Like I'll occasionally, find myself in that situation and be like, wow, that's really dangerous. I should pay more attention. And then 2 minutes later think, I just immediately did it again. Like not even 10 seconds of attention before I went back to, doing whatever else my brain felt like was more important than not murdering myself and a bunch of other people on the road. I was talking about like the ability to sustain society with the food production structures that we have.
Yeah.
But we're also like, there's a few of those structures we've set up where we're not really aware of them, and we probably would still make the same as decisions, but they're more difficult morally to justify. So an element of the lifestyles and the quality of life we have is the moral grayness that we need to live with in terms of our supply chains. Like, there's very few truly ethical supply chains, and if you lived only on purely ethically supplied goods, you'd have a much lower quality of life, right? It goes from like actively bad, but everyone uses them, things like Teflon, where that definitely poisons the environment to make those things, but we find them super useful and we still keep buying them. Things like all of our modern electronics come through companies, and corporate structures and governmental structures that are, morally on the gray scale, but there's no supply. Like, America is not better than China, particularly in my moral weighting, scoring, whatever you want to call that, to the arrogant level of me saying I get to decide whether a country is good or bad. And so, yeah, like if I was cutting out objects where I couldn't be sure of the moral qualities of that object, I would have a significantly lower quality of life, and that's true for all society. Sorry, we got a bit grim for a.
When do we not go grim?
Grim or hyper. Or
okay,
both.
well, I'll bring it back to not grim, and I'm gonna go back to some of the really quirky and fun facts that were raised, and this one's super interesting, and you are totally right. Humans do not have a wetness sensor.
Yeah, it's weird, eh?
It is super weird.
Because you think about things being wet all the time, and like, I'm wet. Well, how would you know?
I hate the feeling of wetness, so now I don't know. Like, after a shower, when the inside of my ears are wet, I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
So
you're actually feeling like evaporation and like. But it's reasonably easy to trick yourself into thinking something is wet when it's not, right? Like, you've probably had the experience of like picking up like cold jeans.
And you're like, are these cold or are they wet?
Yeah.
Yep, 100. I was thinking about, like when you bring in laundry at the end of the day, and you're like, is it cold or is it wet? What it says here is that we as humans do not have high grow receptors dedicated to detecting moisture. Instead, the sensation of wetness is a perceptual illusion constructed by the brain based on a combination of other sensory cues, primarily temperature and tactile. So you're totally correct.
My favorite sentence.
Well, let me add to it because likewise, I love being right. It is absolutely true that people can imagine what something will feel like on their tongue by understanding texture, temperature, sensation, and flavor based on experience. So if you imagine, if you will right now, eating a fresh strawberry, you will probably picture in your mind the texture, slightly firm and juicy but a bit bumpy. You understand the temperature because it might be cool if it's just out of the fridge. You understand the sensation of the juice as this is a perplexity description. I'm not this creative with imagining a strawberry. The juice bursting as you bite with a gentle tickle from the tiny seeds, and you can imagine the flavor. So your brain, in the same way that we don't have a wetness sensor, your brain looks at something like we're in a room right now with foam on the walls for soundproofing, and you just inherently know. Your brain looks at that, and you've got enough lived experience to go, I know what that feels like, and if I licked it, I know what that would feel like.
And you get this really weird experience where when you do it, the actual experience doesn't match your assumed experience, right? Because it looks like foam, but if I tricked you and like put like concrete on the walls and made it look like foam, and you went and touched it and it was hard, you'd get this really weird dissonance experience where the thing is not the same as your expectation of the.
I think that this is why, like say Heston Blumenthal, those really, what is it called, like
molecular gastronomy.
Yeah. It's delightful because as an adult, it's very rare that you come across a sensation that your brain wasn't prepared for. And so when it happens, it's kind of like the delight of being a child again, discovering the world. And when you bite into something that you look at and it looks like one thing, and the short circuit in your brain where you realize it was something else. I remember the first time my kids brought home kinetic sand. I don't know if you've ever touched kinetic sand. I remember saying, this is a new sensation because it looks like sand, but it molds like clay.
Okay, yeah.
And it's really wild to touch. And it definitely probably lights up parts of your brain as an adult where you've not been introduced to new things since you were a kid. And even travel and new smells, like humans want novelty. And as you're just used to everything, we start to chase it more.
I wonder, this will be a fact to check in the Loop Loop backpack.
Loop Loop backpack.
The Loop Loop backpack. I know that different people have different levels of mind's eye. Like when people are remembering things or imagining things, different people have more or less of a visual experience or a auditory experience or like an internal meta experience, right? I have a reasonably weak visual mind's eye, but there are some people who have no visual mind's eye at all. Like they cannot, they imagine a place, they can imagine the experience, they can describe it. Like they could describe what a church looks like based on the words, but they wouldn't have any image of that church appearing in their mind at all. And I wonder if that's the case for all senses. So there are some people who could describe how foam feels, but wouldn't have no actual feel memory. It's all just language based.
It's called aphantasia, when you cannot picture things in your mind, and whether or not it applies to other things. I think it's the opposite, but probably within the same spectrum of things like, how some people can like taste colors or
so
smells.
synthesization. I was thinking synthesization, where you like the brain confuses senses and will overlap one with the other, so you'll experience sounds as colors and vice versa.
And so that memory mapping or sense mapping also links to what you said, which is that pain can indeed influence how well you remember certain information. And it's complex and there's lots of factors. So a couple of quick points is pain can enhance memory for associated events. And that's probably, there's a lot of stuff about, like trauma, PTSD, that makes a lot of sense, but it also impacts memory encoding and recall. So if you have intense or emotional pain, it can enhance your memory. The downside is that it can also impair your memory and concentration. So chronic pain or high intensity pain can actually cause the brain to shut off. So the summary table from Perplexity is that acute pain plus an event can enhance your long-term memory. Chronic pain will impair your memory and attention, and high pain intensity worsens your working memory. So some acute pain might make things better, but definitely it is not a recommendation of those of us here that you go and try and hurt yourself to try and remember things better.
I think the example that I learned that from is like, if you're trying to remember something, go and take a really cold shower, because that's like a painful memory, but not like painful, tricked pain, kind of like it's real experiential pain, but it's not physically damaging long-term pain.
Do you want to end on a high note? Perplexity agrees with you once again that the best Die Hard movie is the first one. Widely regarded. Well, I mean, it's an LLM. It's popular opinion. And it is the best. A timeless action classic, praised for its acting, writing, and influence on the genre. Followed by Die Hard with a Vengeance, Live Free or Die Hard, Die Hard 2, and A Good Day. The Die Hard, which has been universally panned, is the worst. Thank you, Hamish, for joining me on the loop back, and we will look forward to loop, backing another time soon. We out.
We out.